I paid to have our shared fence repaired. She agreed in writing. Then she told the HOA I made unauthorized alterations. I got fined $1,000. When I showed her the text she sent me, she said, "Prove I wrote them."
So I did.
What happened at the board meeting left her speechless. I live in a quiet neighborhood in San Antonio, one of those older subdivisions with ranch-style homes and narrow sidewalks. We've got an HOA, not the worst, but definitely not hands-off. You leave a trash can out one extra day, someone will write it up. I've been here about 7 years. My house sits on the corner of our cul-de-sac. Nice yard, old oak tree out front. The backyard's nothing special. Small patio, patchy grass, and a 6-foot wooden fence that separates me from the neighbor behind me. Her name's Carla. Carla moved in 2 years ago. Older lady, maybe mid to late 60s. Retired nurse. She told me once that her husband had passed a few years back. She kept to herself mostly, but she'd say hi sometimes. We weren't friends, but we were neighborly. She liked to garden. Her yard was always full of potted plants, wind chimes, and these weird stone frogs she'd line up along the fence. The fence was old when I moved in, but over the years it got worse. Boards started leaning. Nails rusted. During storms it would shake. One corner even split after a bad windstorm last winter. Every time I went out back, I'd think, that thing's gonna fall soon. Around March, I finally decided to deal with it. I texted Carla, told her I'd gotten a couple quotes, and asked if she'd be willing to split the cost since the fence sat directly between our properties. She replied the next day, "Yes, I agree. Just let me know what it'll cost." I sent her the quote. $1,300 total. Simple wood replacement, same style, same height. That's fair. Go ahead and schedule it, she replied. I booked it. A guy I'd used before. He showed up 3 days later and finished the whole thing in one weekend. Looked solid. Fresh, but not flashy. Matched the old one exactly. After it was done, I sent Carla a copy of the invoice and asked her to Venmo me her half, $650. No reply. I waited a few days. Sent a reminder. Still nothing. I figured maybe she was out of town.
Or busy.
But then I started noticing things. She stopped waving when I came outside. Started avoiding eye contact. One morning, I saw her walk out to check her mail, and when she saw me, she turned right around and went back inside. A week later, I called her. Straight to voicemail. Then, about 2.5 weeks after the fence was finished, I got a letter from the HOA. Notice of violation. Unauthorized alteration of shared boundary fencing. Fine. $1,000,000.00. I read it 3 times. Thought it had to be a mistake. I emailed the HOA right away. Told them it wasn't an unauthorized change. Sent them the text messages Carla sent me, screenshots, dates, the full conversation. Even attached before and after photos to show the fence looked exactly the same. Their response? Screenshots of messages do not constitute verifiable consent unless authorship is established. Fine remains in place pending further review. I was floored. I went straight to Carla's house and knocked. She opened the door, but didn't say anything. Just stared at me through the screen. I said, "Carla, why would you report me to the HOA? You agreed to the fence. I have your texts." She crossed her arms and said, calm as anything, "Prove I wrote them." That's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was deliberate. She never planned to pay. And now she was trying to punish me for following through. That night, I dug through everything. Every message. Every call. I talked to my buddy Jason, who works in IT, and asked how I could prove the text came from her. He told me to export the message data from my phone and get the metadata, timestamps, sender ID, phone records. I even went online and requested my call and message logs from Verizon. I got everything that linked her number to those texts. Then I filed a small claims case against her for $650. That got her attention. She tried calling me 3 times after that. I didn't answer. A week later, I got a letter from the HOA again. They scheduled an in-person hearing to review the matter and documentation provided by both parties. Carla showed up with a manila folder and a smug look on her face. She brought in 3 printed pages and started telling the board I forced her into agreeing and that I threatened her if she didn't comply. She claimed the fence was different than before, even though it looked exactly the same. I waited for her to finish. Then I laid it all out. The exported text data, the call records from Verizon, the invoice from the contractor, with a note saying, approved by homeowner Carla, last name, on site. And, just to make it airtight, I brought the contractor himself. He came in on his day off and told the board, yeah, she came out the morning we started, looked at the materials, said it looked fine, and told us to go ahead. You could have heard a pin drop. The board president asked Carla directly, do you have any documentation showing you objected to the work at any point before the complaint was filed? She looked down at her binder and didn't say a word. He nodded and said, we'll deliberate now. You'll be notified by the end of the week. She stood up and walked out without looking at me. 3 days later, I got the notice. Fine dismissed. No violations found. Further false complaints may result in sanctions. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. 2 weeks after the hearing, Carla started spreading rumors about me. I didn't hear it firsthand at first. But one afternoon, my other neighbor Tom, who lives across the street, walked over while I was raking leaves and said, hey, man, you and Carla having some kind of war? I asked him what he meant. She's been telling folks you're unstable. Said you threatened her. Said you installed cameras pointed at her windows. I stood there holding the rake like I didn't even know how to move anymore.
No cameras.
Nothing like that. You know me. Tom shrugged. I figured. Just thought you should know. That's when I checked the neighborhood Facebook group. Carla had posted a long, passive-aggressive rant. Didn't name me, but it was clear. Some people think they can intimidate older women just because we live alone, she wrote. When I tried to stand up for my rights, he tried to prove I was lying with technical evidence, like that's not something anyone can fake. I'm so disappointed in our community for letting it slide. People were commenting things like, so sorry you're going through this, Carla, and that's awful. Stay safe.
I didn't respond.
I knew how it would look, but I kept screenshots. Then it got worse. One morning I walked out to find a small plastic bag of nails scattered on my driveway. Random? Maybe. But then it happened again a few days later. This time on my back patio. No cameras. No proof. But I knew. Around that time, I got a letter from the HOA again. This time it wasn't a fine. It was a notice of neighbor complaint saying someone had reported my dog barking excessively and running loose. I don't even have a dog. I sent them an email that just said, is this a joke? They apologized. Said the complaint would be disregarded. But I could feel it.
Carla was testing me.
Poking at me.
Trying to get me to react.
Then one morning, I saw her outside taking photos of my yard. She was standing near the edge of her lawn, holding her phone up, pretending to take a picture of her plants, but her camera was pointed right at my side gate. I walked outside. She froze. I said, do you want something? She lowered her phone slowly and smiled. Just documenting my property line. You never know what people might change without asking. I said, we both know that fence was fair. You agreed. You just didn't want to pay. Her voice didn't even rise. It's not about the fence anymore. And then she walked away. I didn't respond. Not then. Not the next time she stared at me across the lawn. I tried to go back to normal, mow the grass, fix the porch light, ignore her. But I couldn't shake what she said. It's not about the fence anymore.
What the hell was it about then?
A few weeks went by with no major incidents. I started to let my guard down. Maybe she was done. Then I got an email from the HOA again. A follow-up inquiry regarding an anonymous tip they received. They asked if I'd recently installed non-regulation lighting in my backyard and whether I'd added structures not previously approved, like a shed. I hadn't added anything. But my old garden light, the one I barely used, had a small floodlight setting I'd once used during a blackout. I checked my backyard that night. Sure enough, The light was facing the fence, toward her property. It wasn't on. Hadn't been in weeks. But it gave her just enough to twist into something. That night, I turned the light off completely and unplugged it. Then I printed out photos of my yard, dated, time-stamped, and sent them to the HOA just to be ahead of it. The next day, my mailbox was open. Not damaged.
Not tampered with.
Just open. It rattled me. The day after that, I came home from work and found a small, handwritten note folded and wedged under my front doormat. No envelope. Just folded printer paper. It said, "You don't belong here. Sell your house. Leave." That's all. I stared at it for maybe 20 seconds, then took it inside. My hands were shaking. I thought about calling the police. But what would I say? That my neighbor maybe left a vague note with no proof? That she'd been harassing me for months, but in ways that always stayed just shy of illegal? I started looking at my security options. Bought 2 cameras. Installed one over the front door and one facing the backyard. Didn't tell anyone.
Didn't post about it.
Just waited. And 3 nights later, at 2:41 a.m., the backyard camera caught someone slipping through the side gate.
No flashlight. No noise.
Just a small, hunched figure in a hooded sweatshirt. They didn't do much. Just walked slowly along the fence, stopped by the spot where it connects to my house, and then turned around and left. I showed the footage to a buddy of mine who's a cop. He couldn't confirm it was Carla, but he didn't deny it either. Hard to tell, he said. But I'll be honest. That's a woman. That size, that gait. Probably late 60s. Same build as the photo of your neighbor you just showed me. If it were me, I'd file a report. Even if it doesn't go anywhere now, at least it's on record.
So I did.
I filed a report, told them everything. The texts, the HOA lies, the fake complaints, the note, the footage. They logged it but told me without more, there wasn't much they could do. So, I came up with my own plan. My plan wasn't complicated. I just needed to wait her out. Every time she pushed, I'd push back, quietly, legally, carefully. I sent another letter to the HOA. This time, I attached everything. The video footage, the note under the mat, the history of false complaints, the fence evidence, and copies of the small claim settlement. I labeled it, "Ongoing Pattern of Harassment from Neighbor, Request for Formal Review." Then I sat back and watched. At the next HOA meeting, open to residents, I showed up early. I brought my file with me. Sat near the front. Carla walked in about 10 minutes late, scanned the room, and froze when she saw me. She sat in the back. When the floor opened up for resident comments, I stood. "Hi, my name's Mark Reyes. I live at 3134, Painted Horse Trail. I've been part of this neighborhood for 7 years. I'd like to bring a formal complaint of harassment against a neighbor." I didn't name her.
I didn't need to.
I walked them through it, calm and clear, just facts. Fence agreement. False report.
HOA fine.
Proof submitted. Dismissal. Then the note. The camera footage. The late-night walk along my property line. When I was done, the room was silent. Then one board member, a guy named Rick who's lived here longer than me, said, "Can you show us the footage?" I played it from my tablet. Everyone leaned in. You couldn't see her face. But her build, her walk, it was her. It had to be. Rick asked, "Do you have any idea why she'd be targeting you?"
I said, "No."
I followed the rules. I paid to fix a shared problem. She agreed, then turned it into a game. I think she thought she'd get away with it. That's when Carla stood up. Her voice cracked. "He's lying. This is all part of his plan. He's been watching me. Spying. Trying to drive me out." Rick turned toward her. "Ma'am, we've seen your complaint history. This isn't the first time." Then another neighbor, a woman I didn't even know well, raised her hand. "I saw her out by his house late one night last week. I thought it was weird, but I didn't say anything." The room shifted. Carla's face went pale. And that's when the HOA board president leaned forward and said, "We'll be reviewing this as a formal harassment claim. In the meantime, we're issuing a stay on any further complaints coming from either party." Any future issue will need to be submitted with verified proof. Carla sat down. She didn't say another word. I walked out without looking back. But 2 days later, something even stranger happened. 2 days after the HOA meeting, I came home from work and found an envelope taped to my front door. No name. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper.
Typed. Neatly centered.
You think you're smarter. You're not. This isn't over. No signature. No fingerprints that I could see. Just that same cold, calculated tone. I didn't go inside right away. I just stood there on my porch, holding the note, listening. My neighborhood had always felt quiet, peaceful. But now, every rustle of wind or passing car felt like something was creeping up on me. I brought the letter inside, placed it in a Ziploc bag, and called the non-emergency police line. They came out, took another report, added it to the file. But even the officer, while polite, looked tired when he said, "Unless something physical happens, sir, it's going to be hard to pursue." I nodded. I got it. They had bigger problems than a widow with too much time and too much spite. That night, I finally broke and called my sister. Told her everything.
I don't get it, she said.
What does she even want? I didn't know.
Control, maybe. Power.
Maybe she hated being ignored. Or maybe she just wanted someone to hurt with her. That weekend, I saw a for sale sign go up in Carla's yard.
No annunciament.
No listing in the group chat. Just a sign, staked in the ground on a windy Saturday morning. She hadn't told the HOA yet, which I knew because I got an alert a few days later from Rick. He sent a group email that said, "If anyone sees new move-out activity on Painted Horse, please notify the board." There's been no official notice of sale yet. And then the last twist came. A woman knocked on my door one evening, said her name was Diane. She was looking at the house next door, and the realtor was running late. Asked if I knew anything about the place. I hesitated. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. She said her neighbor's been threatening her. Said she had to leave for her safety. I blinked. "She told you that?"
Yeah.
Said some guy across the fence kept spying on her. Harassed her over a fence issue. She made it sound serious. I just stared at the woman. "She told you that's why she's moving?" She nodded, and I smiled tight, bitter. Then I said, "You might want to ask the HOA about that before you make an offer." She raised her eyebrows. "Why?" "Because I've got documentation," I said, "and they've got the rest." She moved out without saying a word to me. No apology, no explanation, not even a glance. And even though the for sale sign is gone, and someone else lives there now, I still catch myself looking over the fence some nights. Like part of me's still waiting for the next note, or complaint, or whisper. It's quiet now, but it doesn't feel like peace. It just feels like I learned something I didn't want to know. Sometimes the person next door isn't just a bad neighbor. They're the kind of person who smiles to your face, then dares you to prove the knife in your back.